Hi, my name is Eleonore, and I beat the often path by hunting down microorganisms that destroy plastic waste.
Can we get rid of all of the plastic floating in the oceans right now? Like the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, 1.6 million square kilometers of largely plastic trash floating in the ocean right at this very moment? Well, some people see this problem in single-use plastics as one of the greatest challenges facing our species today. Others, like my guest on the podcast today, Eleonore Eisath, see this as a locked resource or something that has great potential to be used, reused, and exploited for further gain while cleaning up the oceans in the process. Her startup, Beeworm, is developing a biocatalytic recycling process that decomposes plastic waste into natural raw materials in a genuinely fascinating and potentially scalable solution to this gigantic problem. I'm super excited for you to meet my guest today, Eleonore Eisath. I'm Ross Palmer, and this is Beat the Often Path. Well, welcome to the show. So first of all, Eleonore, it's a pleasure to have you here. Second of all, plastic waste. Not that big of a problem, so you're wasting your time. Why even bother?
Well, I actually think it's a really big problem, and I don't only think that, I know that because I've been looking into this problem for quite a while now, so it has been 5 years. I started looking into it during my studies, and ever since I keep going. And yeah, I think it's one of the world's biggest problems, getting bigger and bigger every year as we're producing more and more plastics every year.
Okay, so talk to me about this Great Pacific Garbage Patch, whatever that is. It's small, right? Just a tiny little thing to sweep it under the rug, no doubt.
I wish it was. No, unfortunately, it's pretty big. And it's only 1 out of 5 of these trash islands that we have right now. I think it has currently the size of 1.6 million square kilometers. I usually
So for the people listening, that's like what? That's like 5 or 6 miles?
I don't know miles because I'm from Europe, but I think
it's 600,000.
Yeah,
it's 0.6.
To have something comparable in the US, it's like the size of Texas or something, or twice the size of Texas. Well, it's pretty big. Like, imagine something pretty big.
Yeah. Well, Texas is only like 6 or 7 miles across.
Okay.
That's not true. That's not true.
Okay,
so
usually
one of 5 giant islands, yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's not going to go away anytime soon because obviously plastics are pretty resilient. The problem is that the chemical structure of plastics is pretty strong. So it's hard for natural organisms to degrade the plastics. But there are a few, and that's what we do at Beeworm, actually. We're hunting down these microorganisms, these little creatures that can split up the plastic molecules into shorter fragments. And basically what comes out there are raw materials that can be reused to produce new plastics. So we're not only taking care of the waste, but we also try to make something out of it that is usable.
So do you think that one of the ways that I personally can combat this is by drinking as much Coca-Cola as I possibly can? Is that a good way that I can help reduce the amount of plastic that ends up in the ocean?
Well, I think it's not good for you and not good for the environment. No, definitely not. So obviously, reducing plastics is number one. So I don't know if you're familiar with the pyramids of how to solve the waste problem, but it's reduce, reuse, recycle. So before we recycle, each and every one of us should avoid as much as possible.
I completely agree. And I try to take, it's not always easy. I think probably it's easier where you are. But here, there are certain things that I do or I try to do. Like I get soap that's not in plastic packaging. I use a shampoo bar instead of shampoo that comes in a tube. So I do my best. But I have read that despite all of our best efforts to reduce the amount of single-use plastic that we use, the amount of plastic that we're dumping is only growing. And in fact, it hasn't really even slowed in the reduce component of this. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately it's right. So that doesn't mean that not everyone should give their best, but I mean, there are a lot of factors playing into this. So first of all, the pandemics was also a major driver of plastic production, especially of single-use plastics, because everything that needs to be like really hygienic is usually single-use plastics. You use it once, you throw it away. And then, of course, there's a lot of emerging countries right now using plastics, and it's their right, because we have been doing it for a long time as well. But obviously, if 1.3 billion people start using plastics in a huge amount, things are not going to get any better. And yeah, I mean, what is important to say there, though, is the plastic itself is not the problem. Like, it's not the material that is like evil and trying to like kill us. The material doesn't have any moral, usually. I don't know. At least I think it doesn't.
That we're aware of. Yeah.
Hopefully. No. Anyway, so the plastic itself is not the problem. It's actually a pretty good material. And when it was invented in the 1940s, 50s, people were super hyped about it because they thought like, wow, all our problems are solved now. It's so light. It's so easy to make. It's so cheap. It's going to solve everything. And people were super hyped about it. The only problem, or the biggest problem, is that it's too stable for its use. Like, basically, a single plastic, for example, I don't know, like a fork made out of plastics, can resist for like 400 years in the environment if the right organisms aren't around. But it's used for like 5 seconds. And that's the problem here. So the use and the material don't fit to each other. And we have to come up with a bunch of solutions in order to like even this out. So we have to come up with other materials for single-use things first of all. And then for all the plastics, chemical plastics that we use in our products, we need to come up with solutions how to take them back to the circle and to make something useful out of it. But technically, that's all possible. Technically, it wouldn't be so hard to make a fully recyclable plastic. The problem is we don't do it because we like cheap and easy things, right? So it's also a mentality problem.
All right, so you came up with this idea, and you know, the company or the organization is called Bee-Worm, B-E-Worm, but of course, play on words of bee, the bzz, buzzing around kind of bee. So we have learned that this type of, it's larva, right? And there's an enzyme in the stomach of this organism. And it's the enzyme that we're after. I know this from watching your video and from reading your site. It's the enzyme that we're after because it's not like you can have larva
and the enzyme.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So there's this profound discovery that these things break down plastic and a specific type of plastic. So how did you come up with the idea that, okay, this might be something?
So it's not my only research. So there's more research about this. I have to say this from the get-go. So I started with a paper from an Italian researcher, and she found out that this waxworm could actually eat plastics. So that was all that was known by then. And then I started looking into it with my team, and we found some gut bacteria that could actually attack the plastics. So right now we have 55 different bacteria strains that can attack polyethylene. But in the meantime, also the research and the other researchers got further, and the worm was actually discovered as being one of the best sources for this bacteria and microorganisms, and also enzymes that can split up plastics. But when we started, nobody really believed in it, and actually this researcher, I think she had quite a tough time at the beginning because a lot of people were doubting her work, and now it's actually state of the art that there is something in the worm. But we focus on the microorganisms that we got from the worm's gut.
That's so cool. And it's specifically polyethylene, which to me, I don't know if you're familiar with, white trash culture in the United. When I hear polyethylene, I think of like, hey, polyethylene, come on down. Like the doors, you left the cooler open. It sounds like a name that would be somewhere in the South out here. But what is so special about polyethylene? What types of things are polyethylene? I know grocery bags are. What else?
Oh, a lot of things are polyethylene. Foils, food wraps, all kinds of packaging that you have in the food cosmetics industry, car stuff. Basically, 34% of every plastic that we use is polyethylene. So it's the most commonly used plastics. It's a polyolefin, which means that it's within the category of polyolefins, while, for example, PET, so the cola bottle that you mentioned before, that's PET, so that's a polyester. Like your shirt, maybe, it's also polyester.
Oh, and, good calling me out. Hey, it's from Goodwill. It's not new, but no, you're right. It probably is. It's probably not good.
And the kind of technology that we are developing is the furthest in the polyesters. So in the polyesters, there's also, the research is quite far already. So the degradation mechanism has been understood quite well, and it's already happening in a pilot scale. While for the polyolefins, which is PE, PP, and others, it's in the beginning. So it's really crucial for us and the other teams now to understand how the degradation pathway works and how we can make this more efficient. Because once we understood how it works, we can optimize it and use it in an industrial scale. Right now, it's only working in a lab scale. And that's the challenge here. So the thing is, for some types of plastics, it's easier to break them down because they're of their chemical structure. But polyethylene is a really like stubborn one. It has like a CC bonding in the backbone. That sounds like really technical, but basically you have to imagine that this is like just a really stable, chemically inert thing. So one of the crucial steps is to oxidize the surface in order for the microorganisms and bioagents to get in. So you need to have like really strong enzymes there that can do the job. And also what is also tricky and why nobody has like finally found out yet is that you need to have a combination of enzymes in order to break it down. So it's really crucial to understand who does what and how they do it in order to make it more efficient. While for other plastics, maybe just one or two enzymes are enough. For polyethylene, it's quite probable that you need a cascade of enzymes.
Okay, so in under 1 minute, because my attention span is so short right now, in under 1 minute, if the commercialization of your idea comes to pass, in under 1 minute, describe the process from start to finish, ideally. What's the input? What's the output?
The input are waste fractions that are not feasible for any kind of existing recycling. So contaminated, colored, and layered plastics. They will be put into a bioreactor. The bioagents are going to break them down into oligomers. These oligomers could be something like ethylene glycol or ethanol. And these are basic chemicals that can be reused to produce new plastics or to produce other stuff in the petrochemical industry. So you have a fully closed loop, sustainable, resource-saving recycling process. That was under 1 minute.
All right, great. You passed. Shark Tank, yes. Dragon's Den, we all say, yes, you got the investment. You did it. Phew. Okay, the hardest part of the interview is now over. I can't thank you enough for sitting down and sharing this. I think it's fascinating, fabulous. And again, one look at your website, which again we'll share here, is and you clearly see the problem, you clearly see the solution, you clearly see, in my opinion, why it's so exciting. So I can't thank you enough for taking a chance on this new career path, both for yourself and for the planet. And also for sitting down with me and sharing your thoughts. It's very refreshing to hear how you see the world, and it makes me feel better about the future that we're all coming into. So really, really, really want to say thanks for that. The last bit of this show is yours. So what would you like to promote? Where can people support you or follow you? And then you'll close us out.
Everybody can adopt a worm if they want on our website. So basically you can adopt a worm, give him a name, him or her, a name, and be a worm supporter. You also get to be featured on our Worm Wall of Fame. So it's just a little contribute to our research. It's really capital intense. So every euro or dollar or whatever currency you have in your country counts. Or, just listen to our podcast. We have been a little bit not lazy lately. We have been quite busy, but we will put out another episode hopefully soon. yeah, it's more like a passion project, but I really like to do it because, as I told you, I love podcasts. So yeah, you can listen to our podcast. You can follow us on LinkedIn. You can, I don't know, do your own plastic solving thing. That would also be really nice. And yeah.
And the website is beworm.org, BEWORM.org. Fabulous stuff. So thanks again, Eleonore. And with that, the official podcast is over. Thanks again for listening to another episode of the Beat the Often Path podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode or any of the episodes we've shared, it would mean a great deal to me if you subscribe to the podcast on your platform of choice or on YouTube. And of course, if you shared either the show itself or this particular episode with somebody who might want to hear it to help us grow the audience for the show, I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. So if you've been a passive listener all this time, I get it. I understand. There's no big deal with that. But it would really, really mean a lot to me if you leave a positive review and help me grow this show. So thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.